black coffee.
This is the Exchange Coffee Podcasting Network. Coffee people talking to coffee people about coffee and things coffee adjacent. This episode of The Exchange is brought to you by Coffeehouse Specialty Coffee, where coffee is always a collaborative voyage. Welcome to the Exchange Coffee Podcast, hosted by Mark Inman and Todd Mackey. This is episode 43, and the topic is selling roasted coffee wholesale. All three people on the mic in this episode have worked for coffee roasters and been responsible for selling coffee. Todd frames the conversation by introducing the 4 P's of selling roasted coffee. And now, here they are, Mark and Todd.
Welcome, listeners of The Exchange. This is your co-host, Todd Mackey, and with me, of course, is Mark Inman. Mark, how are you today?
I'm doing well, Todd. How are you?
I'm doing quite well, and additionally, we have our esteemed producer, Mike Ferguson. Mike, how are you today?
That's not my job title now. It's no longer esteemed producer. It's executive producer.
Well,
I'm so sorry.
Executive producer of the Exchange Coffee Podcasting Network.
Network.
Yeah,
we are
it's not
just merely
a
podcast within that network.
A card in the
shining jewel, of course, but nevertheless, just one of the many holdings of the Exchange Network empire.
Yeah, it's how you got there, but at this stage, we're just like another paper in the bundle.
Yep.
Arrow in the quiver of Mike Ferguson. Anyway, what a pleasure to be with you both today, and to our listeners none of whom are listening live.
Oh, are you sure?
As that is not possible, but to our listeners, we appreciate you joining us. And today's episode is selling roasted coffee. Now, this is a reprise. Yeah. If I'm not mistaken.
Well, somewhat. But
Mike puts an asterisk around that.
Yeah, because while I think we've touched on it before, and you guys have certainly talked about it in general terms, more strategy, I feel like the tactical level, we've never gotten drilled down. I mean, sort of I call the shoe leather, nuts and bolts. I'm a roaster. My business has gotten to the side. I've sold some online. I've got 1 or 2 accounts. The dentist buys a pound, you know. But I'm feeling now I would like to go out and get a wholesale account. How do I sell wholesale coffee? From day one, okay, I decided I'm devoting this week to selling and trying to get something going. What am I going to do?
Right.
Yeah, of course. Well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to crack this open, and we're going to do so. I'm going to propose 4 P's of selling roasted coffee as a framework for how we put this episode together. And Mark, I know that's a bit of a surprise to you, but
I'm stunned.
I'm confident that you're going to click right in, and it might feel really good. So what I'm going to say is there are 4 P's to selling roasted coffee. At the end of the episode, at the tail of the episode, you are more than welcome to poke holes and try to...
I have to wait till then to do that?
I mean, you just give it some time.
Okay,
let it come together. It might take that time to see the methodology here.
Gotcha.
But I remember vividly in an early episode about wholesale and selling roasted coffee, suggesting this, but I think we can flesh it out. And I think we can get pretty specific with some examples here.
Right.
But I think that the first essential element, the first of the 4 P's of selling roasted coffee is point of view. What do I mean by that, Mark?
Good question. I have no idea. I would say this before we get into, because I think you and Mike are specifically going down the road of wholesale whole bean sales. One of the things when I took my notes, so I get up in the morning, I have my coffee, and I write my show notes for the day. This is what I want to talk about.
Oh, wait, you drink coffee too?
Of course.
You're a coffee
live
drinker.
on it, yes. And I've been here in Providence all week enjoying the local coffee hotspots. So,
nice.
This morning, I was sitting in Bolt Coffee having a delicious cappuccino, and based on the game show episode in the NCA consumption report, Coffee Drinkers Survey, I think the number one thing any roaster should be focused on right now, before you get into wholesale accounts, is to hyper focus on increasing your whole bean sales within your business to your customer. That is number one before you even think about doing any of these other things for a handful of reasons. One, there's a lot more profit to be made when you're in charge of the point of sale to the customer. You don't have to give margins away. You don't have to have the significant levels of investment that we are going to talk about with these other avenues. And I always like, the podcast to me, it's like, people enjoy hearing us banter. But at the end of the day, I want the listener to walk away with, these are concrete steps I can do to make my business better. If we deliver them that, we've done our job, and we live on in infamy. But number one is getting whole bean sales in your shop, boosting it. The percentage was shockingly low. What was it?
Oh, I think it was 5%.
5% of all coffee whole bean purchases are done in the coffee house.
Well, this is all coffee. All coffee purchased, roasted, whole bean or ground by coffee drinkers.
So there is 95% potential for you to grow in that. Again, you're going to realize all the profit. You're going to increase customer returns and like coming back to you for more purchases, customer loyalty. It all benefits you. So I think that, and we can talk about that as well as one of the 5 Ps if you want to get into it. But I think that,
5? Are you suggesting?
Well, if that's not one of your Ps, I think the whole bean sales within your existing business is the number one thing you should be doing first.
So this is sort of a floor check. So before you start thinking about Todd's Ps, we just want to make sure you're fully, because the vast majority of our customers are roasters who also operate a retail.
Yeah.
Or more than one. So speaking to them, so before you start thinking about looking outside, make sure you've got the inside fully exploited as much as you can, and then we can go on to Todd's piece.
Yeah. Now, in my particular case, as a former wholesale roaster who did grocery, hotels, restaurants, my most meaningful sales of whole bean were internal. I had whole bean stores. I didn't have cafes. I had a number of whole bean stores. And I packaged my coffee in refillable cans. And the idea was if you came back to the store and you refilled your can, you received a discount for the reuse of the package. The stores were no more than 350 square feet, and they were gravity-fed bins. And the customer came in and topped their own cans off. It was a flat price to refill. We would re-sticker the can if it was a different coffee. The customer can grind the coffee if they wanted to in the store or take it whole bean home. And then within that store, we sold filters, brewers, espresso machines, anything you wanted related to home consumption of coffee, we had it there. Those stores, I mean, you've run retail coffee shops, cafes. Net margin, average net margin is what on a good store for you?
Net margin for coffee.
Your business, if you had your cafe
across the board, at the end of the year. Anyone who's making between 7 and 10% is doing great.
So my whole bean stores were 35 net. One staff member, the customer basically was the labor. They refilled their own cans, they ground their own coffee, they picked the filters off the shelf, and that was all done internally. That netted us 35%. So when I had a business partner. He was very enamored with, I want to be like Blue Bottle. I want to have cafes. I'm like, no, you don't. You want to do whole bean stores wherever they work because we're triple, quadruple the profit margins of a coffee house, which has very high costs to operate. So I think, and I'm not suggesting you go out and open whole bean stores, but adding a vibrant whole bean section within your cafe and having somebody focused on selling whole bean coffee within your store, doing things like if they're a subscriber, if it's a local subscriber, you offer bicycle delivery or electric bike delivery or something fun to stand out. Offering subscription services for sure. Having tastings because tastings drive whole bean sales. I live in the wine country. The business of selling wine is based on tasting rooms, luring you with the quality of their wines through a tasting, and then trying to sell you on wine clubs where they send you regular shipments of wine. This is the same, you would use the same strategy within your own business to do this with coffee. The profit margins will be there. You'll increase your profitability of your cafe. If you were to boost your sales of whole bean coffee in your cafe by 20%, it would make that 7 to 10%, maybe 12 to 15% net margin, which is a drastic improvement in the long run of your business.
Let me ask, may I engage you in a line of questioning? Is that all right? Why cans?
So why I did cans personally, I did cans for a couple of reasons. One is they're plentiful. The can I use specifically, now I get this a lot. People email me and they said they either remember my cans or they've seen other people I've known that I've helped them go through the program to get cans. The can you want is called a 401 by 508. That is the can size. It's called a brine shrimp can in the canning world. They make them by the millions a year, so they're dirt cheap. A can printed lithograph on the can, lid, cap, everything was cheaper than a multi-layered bag. So for one, I was saving money to have something cooler. Second, in most grocery store settings, if I walk through, it's a sea of bags, and the bags are jumping out by color, graphics, and then all of a sudden you have a totally different shape, a bright can. It stood out, so it made me pop.
And it's not red or blue.
It's not red or blue. The third thing is if I ask an average person, hey, what does the Pete's coffee bag look like? Now, Mike Ferguson knows the answer to this, but if I said, Mike, tell me what a Hills Brothers can looks like, he knows exactly what that can looks like, not because he was a Hills Brothers fan. It's because he may, in his parents' garage, they kept their nuts and bolts in the can. He had his color crayons in the can as a kid. People don't throw away cans, so it's a constant reminder. It's a branding opportunity within your house. I did an ad campaign called The 101 Uses for the Tailor-Made Can, and people would send me, like, backpackers would turn it upside down and wire hang their keys on the inside, and it acted like a bear bell. And we would give, prizes for the best use of the can. And it became a thing. It became something I was known for. In addition, everybody would say, well, God, if you do cans, you're going to be compared to Folgers and Maxwell House. That's not where the grocery store put me. I was near Illy Cafe and Lavazza. I was exactly where I wanted to be. So there was just no downside. It's rigid. It doesn't wrinkle like when you put bags on the shelf, especially if you're packaging in like polyline paper bags when you're starting. That wrinkles. It looks terrible if you're handling it to get it to the point of sale. And it's recyclable and it's reusable. And it's biodegradable. The can will rust in time and disappear back to the earth. So those are the reasons. Yeah,
no, I mean, I could repeat this back, but I think everyone listening is thinking the same thing that I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. But this is expressly a point of view.
Yes.
Like
first P.
Best represented by you saying it pops and it's cooler.
Yeah.
Right? So, like, yes, the business case can make sense. They're cheaper.
Right.
They're rigid. The ecological perspective and point of view of, hey, this is more responsible.
Right.
But at the leading edge of that point of view is this is cool.
Right.
It's unique. And it pops.
Yeah.
Right? And I would even say, zooming back a touch further, as you say, hey, the first place to look is not the outside third-party wholesaler. The first place to look is, how do I sell myself more coffee?
Yeah.
Right? If I'm a roaster and I have a point of sale, like, how do I sell myself more coffee? Because it's left pocket, right pocket. Like, I'm catching it either way. So how do I get that margin instead? And so I would actually say that it was around this time, these times, that first bean bar with Starbucks, and then another wave of influential coffee retail with like Stumptown cafes and Intelligentsia. This demonstration of point of view becomes critical,
absolutely,
to anyone else wanting to use your product. Right. And I have to imagine, beyond just the business case, but just because people said to themselves, whoa, look at how this brand is tied up in all this good stuff. Right. I want to buy that coffee.
Yeah.
Why do I want to buy that coffee? Maybe I may be the hiker. I may be the outdoor supply store that wants to offer coffee because it's totally an aligned good, or we have groups that set out on hikes in our region and they start early and we want to provide coffee. And 100% is going to be your sort of lifestyle alignment and your brand's point of view that makes it make sense in a sea of too many roasters in so many ways. Right.
Absolutely.
Like that you can buy any coffee at any price from a number of different options. So if it is not clear why someone would choose you or what you're trying to accomplish as a company or brand, you're not going to be able to follow through on the remaining piece.
Absolutely.
But yeah, thank you for the example. That was awesome. It actually lined up perfectly. Do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Okay.
Excellent.
I like how you brought it back to the first P.
Yeah,
it does fit. It checks off all the boxes.
Right where I hoped. I mean, but yeah, I think like the key, and I don't think point of view is just, I think there's
your wholesale point of view.
There's a squishy in between area where it's like, yeah, of course, having something that looks cool can be a part of it. But I mean, you really have to know, like, why this coffee?
Right.
Why this coffee? Like, yeah, you're a coffee roaster. I get it. There's lots of coffee roasters. So, like, why this one? You can have a myriad of ways that you demonstrate this, whether it's, organizations and not-for-profits you support, whether it's, like, ways that you distribute coffee within your community to support initiatives, whether it's, lifestyle. Hey, we offer on-the-go pour-over, biodegradable pour-over sachets because, we're a trail coffee company.
Sure.
There's all these different ways, but you can't do all of them. And
no.
You got to do something that puts you in a lane.
Yeah, and keep the focus narrow. You don't want to be too broad because then your message gets muddied.
No, you can't be everything to everyone.
Right.
I just wanted to tie a bow on Mark's point, because I think that percentage of people who are buying coffee, the coffee they prepare at home from a coffee house, could go up.
Yeah.
If a couple very, very simple things were followed. Too often you go into a coffee house that is selling ground and whole bean coffee, and it's like an afterthought.
Right.
They're not even thinking about it. Just two simple things. The coffee's got to be on the way to the register.
Yeah.
It's got to be. And then the other thing is that people are attracted to abundance. This is not the time for minimalist displays or stack that coffee up, stack it up. And if you're not moving that much coffee, just make the space smaller.
Right.
But it should look abundant. It should look,
Yeah. And frankly, most times I go to coffee houses and when I travel, the whole bean area is either in the dead corner of the store because they're like, well, it's just an area. We'll just stuff some bags over there. Or it's got the minimal display where it's like one package near one filter. And it's like, that is the wrong message 100%. Mike couldn't be more correct there. Don't make it an afterthought in your retail store.
All right. Well, I'm ready to move on to the second P.
Plate full of peas today.
Let's go.
P number 2.
Eat your peas.
Number 2 is presence. Now, let me flesh this out a little bit. Presence is obviously a buzzy word in the mindfulness headspace. The way that I'm trying to apply this is that the way to sales is by presence, being in the industry, being in the community, being in the places that you want to sell, and being available.
Sure.
So I cannot tell you the number of accounts that roasters I work with that are sales of theirs because they are the first thought when this new account opens. Hey, yeah, this company that's here, they're the first one I gave mine to. Of course, I'm going to call them. Their point of view is attractive to me, and I want to do what they are already doing in my own way. And I know them. I can reach them. I can find them. And I can trust them. And I think presence is a huge central point to all of that.
Right.
I'm sure this has been a big reason in your days as a roaster why you were super involved with the trade association,
right.
the guilds, with all the local organizations. I mean, give us a little detail on that. Like, how did you look at presence as a roaster?
So we were active. I mean, the founders of the company, we were all mountain bikers. So we were active in cycling community, which spilled into then like 10K runs, 12 or half marathons where we would serve coffee at these events. We were attaching ourselves to the active community. And then what I started to branch off into with the whole bean sale idea was the idea of go into the school systems there. Many times, being parents, we all are, our kids, when they were in elementary school, would often sell wrapping paper or sell some weird good for fundraising efforts at the school. But those products just came from this national company that was selling just junk. And you just felt obligated to buy whatever it was they were peddling to help the school out. So I would approach the schools and say, offer a product that people actually want. They want coffee. They drink coffee weekly. You can sell coffee in a fundraiser format, and then we can come up once a month with the van, and they could refill their can at the school when they drop their kids off. Like that could be a program instead of selling chocolates or instead of selling things that, I mean, how many rolls of wrapping paper does one need? And versus I'm taking my whole bean store concept and putting it in a fundraiser school effort. So we got involved in there. And then I eventually got involved in local politics, and I was on the economic development board, and that was being involved with businesses within the county. And that, as being a wholesaler, obviously if they were food related businesses, I would be interacting with them. So yeah, you need to be known and an entity within your community.
Yeah. And if your point of view is, hey, we're a super quality focused roaster, we're dedicated to the craft of making coffee, we're dedicated to baristas and the coffee retail community in that regard, like hosting events, having throwdowns. I mean, this was like, there was a time where there were long lists. Like I remember in the early days of the Providence Coffee Society, there was a list of people that wanted to host those events.
Sure.
To be present and to be in that mix, right? But yeah, that's a huge one.
Yeah, we created this group called the Sonoma Six Pack, and it was Sonoma County is a very, very foodie and wine-oriented area, but the Sonoma Six-Pack had Cowgirl Creamery cheese, which, if you know Cowgirl Creamery, we had Berry Republic Brewing Company, we had Root Down Wine, and there was myself, and then there was a bread company, and we would do events together, like these food displays in grocery stores as a collective. Like these are gourmet products from the region, and that kind of the rising tide lifts all boats. It was great because we weren't competitors. There's no way that I was going to ever be competitive against the Berry Republic. I mean, they're a beer company, I'm a coffee company. There's no overlap. But for people that are fans of Cowgirl Creamery or fans of Berry Republic, they're like, oh, they're involved with this group. I'm going to try this coffee out. And so make alliances as well. I was one who always believed that you can make alliances even with other coffee companies within your community, because in where I lived, there was maybe 10 roasting companies. But when you look at the greater Bay Area, there are hundreds of them. So it's like they're the enemy, not you. You and I are different. We're in the same community, but we're offering a different point of view. There are accounts that come to me, and I would be like, you're not really a fit for what I'm doing, but this other roaster is a great fit. That was harder to sell because no matter what, the other coffee company just felt threatened by the idea of trying to get in bed, or maybe I was just terrible at negotiating this alliance.
No, I think that there is a threshold there that's different for different people, unfortunately. And the confidence to go into those spaces can often be pretty intimidating.
Yeah. I mean, I tried, but I really believed I could accomplish that, but I was never successful in that particular one.
So I used to say, local is as local does. Mm-hmm. And so one thing strategy has, go where the chefs are.
Right.
So there's an event and the chefs are there handing out. We would want to be right next to them handing out coffee. Our outreach worker would be handing out coffee. To me, in terms of sponsorships or being involved, my paper cup in somebody's hand was more valuable than my logo on a website. I always pursue presence.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, one great lens to see presence as a requirement or as an opportunity for sales. When I was years ago selling roasted coffee, I was working for a roaster who had a large number of Whole Foods locations as a grocery partner. And this is, of course, way more common now than it was then,
Right.
as Whole Foods has grown enormously.
Yeah.
At the time, I know there's things that have changed in terms of how they buy and how many local roasters in any given location they might carry. But like one of the things that was a clear opportunity was demonstrations, giving away samples, being in the store. And it was interesting because I would cross paths with other roasters who, we were side by side to. We would talk about, this store is good. The traffic here is good. This one's bad. This, whatever. Everyone missed the bigger opportunities. It was never, well, how many bags did you sell while you were there?
Right.
To me, it was, I get to hang out in and around the specialty buyer
Right.
who is entering the POs
Yeah, that's your customer.
for our cases,
Right.
right? And the one who, when someone is like, hey, there's all these bags, which one should I have? Which one should I take this week? What's interesting? Who do you care about, right? They're asking that department lead or someone who works closely with them.
Right.
And so you could see if you paid attention and you saw, 3 consecutive like monthly demos, I might sell 3 or 4 bags in a couple of hours.
Yeah.
To customers they're taking samples, we're having good interactions.
Sure.
It was not a bad time. I would do circusy stuff like put a thermocouple in like a Chemex, just to get people to stop and to kind of be like,
Right.
especially at that time, very unusual. And people would just ask like, what the hell is going on?
Right.
But the interesting thing was how engaging it was to the staff that was actually selling the coffee 100% of the time. We weren't there.
Right.
So the ability to have warm connections with people that think, hey, if I'm a specialty buyer who like understands enough about coffee to be dangerous, but I know I like that guy or, her, she who, came in on behalf of so-and-so. And, there's that connection there. Not to mention the fact that in these organizations, often people move up and would become regional buyers,
Right.
would start to take the brand to new places. So it was really instructive in that way.
Well, yeah. And I used to sit in large grocery accounts I had with Paul Katzef, who on Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving was a competitor, but a fellow grocery wholesaler. And we would sit and watch people in the coffee aisle. And, this is back when there was a sea of gravity-fed bins and a bunch of packaged coffees. And you would watch the consumer come in there and they would grab a bag to fill out of the gravity. And they just kind of like mesmerized by the sea of choice. And they would just eventually just grab a handle and pull because they were just completely overwhelmed with choice. To have somebody working there that's an ally to you, and the customer saying, hey, what do you think's good coffee? And they're like, that one right there. You want that person doing that. And as much as I hate this personally, I am somebody who does not like logoed gear. I'm not a fan of like, Mike's Bread Company and Todd's Cider. Like, personally, I'm not going to wear that. It's just not for me. And so when I had my coffee company, I was always very reluctant to print that kind of stuff. But the grocery store workers loved those freebies, the hats and the shirts. I could never figure out why they cared about it because they had access to all of it. And if you went in there and gave T-shirts to the workers, they always took care of your stuff. They always recommended you. And one step further, something that I knew, now this has changed a little bit, but back when I was in grocery wholesale, there's gravity-fed bins, the bulk coffee, and then there's packaged. Nowadays, it's mostly packaged. I think COVID kind of changed the rules. But from a volume standpoint, you sold 10 times the gravity-fed coffee than you ever did on the shelf. So you wanted to be in the bulk bins, and it took you a while to get there. They would start you out on the package, and they're like, if you could show me good numbers, I'll put you in there. So you'd have to demo to get the package sold. But once you're in the gravity fed, usually you had to buy the bins or own them. And there were some wholesalers that, well, first you had to fill them yourself. So you bring, your driver would go bring in the bulk bags. They'd pull the shelves off, fill them and put them back in. If that driver didn't come back for 3 days and that gravity bin got wiped out, nobody filled it for you. So we did the math, and I would find like the guy that's sweeping the floor, and I would say, I'm going to give you $100 a week out of my pocket if you keep that bin full. And that, it tripled my sales of bulk coffee. Now, the second thing, which I wasn't able to get somebody internally, but the gravity fed bins and all the oils in the coffee, as it goes through, the oils go rancid, they turn the bin orange. You had to wash those bins out pretty regularly or they looked really funky. Like, one of, I don't even want to mention the name of the company, but one of my competitors, it was like looking through amber glass to see the coffee, and nobody would buy that. So you had to pull those bins and wash them, and the more clean they were, the faster the coffee moved. So those were some tips to curry favor within the store. One is a bribe, and then the other one is just stoking them out with gear. Yeah, but all of that is presence. I mean, it's showing energy. Yeah.
It's even like playing the best possible hand you can to just like be top of mind,
Right.
And I think that whether that person's the buyer or there's someone who's engaging the buyer, the story is the same. When you are there, you're expressing and distilling your point of view for your potential buyer, both the consumer or the wholesale customer who's engaging a bunch of consumers on your behalf. You're there and people understand who you are, what you're doing, and also know how to find you.
Just to reinforce one of Mark's points, the three of us were at a bar last night. Shout out to Ogie's Trailer Park.
Yeah.
The bartenders both had Twisted Tea caps on. And it's all, so anyway, that's that. But also, if you've not spent time loitering in the coffee aisle at a grocery store, not only to look at what's on the shelf, how is it organized, what does the packaging look like, but to observe consumer behavior.
Right.
Shame on you.
Yeah.
So.
Well, especially before you get into that world, if you're thinking about entering the grocery world, you need to do quite a bit of that. Go stand hour, 2 hours, don't talk to anybody, and just watch behavior and how people buy, how people select, and what they are attracted to. It could be packaging color, it could be packaging shape. See their behavior. It's very fascinating, and it's going to give you a lot of info before you go in there and you basically become wallpaper within that aisle, and you are too obscure and you're not standing out.
Even if grocery store sales aren't in your immediate future,
right?
That's a classroom worth spending time in.
Yeah.
All right. Next P. Now this one, like all of these, but certainly the next two, they really have to be taken a number of ways.
Okay.
But that's why I think they're important. The third P of selling roasted coffee is persistence. And I'm going to start persistence by talking about, through the lens of presence, it needs to be consistent and ongoing. Presence is not a one-time thing. It is not a single offer. It is not one email, one cold call. Persistence is a commitment to the objective. And as someone who is not, I don't know that any of my customers would call me pushy or like a heavy hand as it relates to the sales that I do, which I am successful at selling. But my perspective on this is that persistence is constant availability and being ready with what the customer needs when they need it, being relentless in terms of, knowing your market, where the opportunities are and where they can be, and continuing to put yourself in the way of these things. So it's not all just, hey, I'm going to corner the buyer and beat them up with offer, sample, price. But more so the persistence of, hey, when you're ready, if ever you need, if we're right here, let me know. I'm interested. Sure. But I do think like that is, as I've seen it, whether it relates to persistence as like a macro concept, if you are a roaster and you would like to sell more coffee in wholesale avenues, you need to either have your own time protected to do it, or you have to have a dedicated person whose job it is to do this. It will not happen on accident. It cannot just be a one-off. We had sales week for the year. Okay, let's see what happens, right? This is a persistent, ongoing effort. And I think you need to structure it as such. I think you need to really prioritize that is an effort of the company, a priority and value of the company to go out and to make it happen.
When I would add to that, I think that whether you're wholesaling into food service or restaurant, hotels or grocery, you don't want the delivery or interaction to be just whatever staff member you have at that day can go out and take care of it. You want a person per account because, and they could have multiple accounts, but because it's relationship driven, the buyer forms a relationship with that person. And if it's new faces all the time, you're never going to establish that relationship with the wholesale customer. And when the buyer likes the rep, and they get the doors open for you. So you want to, and if you find that your wholesale person is not connecting and is not forming relationships, you need to mix it up quickly because that is what's going to determine your success or failure. It is how much the buyer likes you, unfortunately.
Yes, specifically on coffee houses. Well, first of all, don't cold call coffee houses. If you're a wholesale roaster, just don't. It's on the verboten list. But do become a regular. Yeah. I mean, if there was a coffee house that was doing 50 pounds or more a week, become a regular. And I was happy to sign off on expenses.
Sure. For
people who are sitting in a coffee house and having a croissant and a coffee. If you're a salesperson worth your salt, you should be knowing what the average ticket is.
Yeah.
You should be able to judge pounds per week.
Yeah.
And then you should be able to watch the comings and going and get a sense of who the decision maker is in that context. But yeah, become a regular. No cold calls, only warm calls.
Right.
Yeah, and all the time I sold roasted coffee, there was not one time that I stopped in on a cafe cold and it turned to anything.
It's a complete wasted
not
effort.
Even one. I've never heard anyone tell that story.
Yeah.
Ever.
Now, grocery is a different story because there's a bazillion products in there, and the only way you're going to get a meeting is to cold call and hope that they meet. There's no magic ticket to get in there unless you are on the city council or somehow you made some weird connection. But you have to stand in the cattle call line and try to get acknowledged by the buyer to actually want to work with you. But cafes and I would say restaurants also, they're just far too busy to deal with a person coming in off the street wanting to have a meeting.
For sure.
Yeah.
All right. 4th P. We're here already. Time just flies, doesn't it? This last one, again, this is another one that you have to look at. It's almost like a cut stone. You have to look at through many angles. But the 4th and final P is pricing that works. And the first angle that you have to look at and make a switch is you have to look at this both pricing that works for the customer and maybe even more importantly, pricing that works for you.
Right.
You cannot enter this space and sell coffee consistently, persistently, and ongoing in a healthy way if this in an environment like the one we're in with
especially
prices being
right
so
now.
high.
Yeah.
If that pricing does not work for you. But there's many ways to talk about pricing. I'm sure you guys have tons of stories. Take it away.
Well, and I'm glad you brought this up because a lot of my notes today were about this particular P in relation to what's going on right now, in relation to the issues my customers have had this year with the current pricing. So I could share my example from my days as a wholesaler and then give you some pricing ideas with what I'm dealing with my clients. When I was a wholesaler, the temptation to offer a low price to get your foot in the door is very tempting, but it is a gigantic mistake because it's very easy to lower your prices once you're in there. It's very hard to raise prices once you're in there. So you want to quote a price that's based on something that makes sense for your business to be profitable. You cannot budge on this one. Now, the way to make it more tasty for the buyer to want to go with you is offer better service. That's what's more important to them ultimately than price. Because where they often get let down is, well, my brewer broke and the guy didn't get back to me for 3 days or 4 days and I lost all these sales, or I had to go try to do it myself, or, I ran out of coffee on a Saturday and I called the owner and he didn't even return my call. And that you're saying, no, we will do that. We want to make sure that you're happy, and you come with this service-focused business plan with them. The relationship's going to be very attractive versus cutting your cost by 25 cents a pound. It's not nearly as attractive, although you may think that's what's going to get your foot in the door. Secondly, if you get into distribution on a regional scale or larger scale, you have to read the fine print within the deals that they throw you. The distributors have a business that is ironclad around how they operate. And if you are new to wholesale, you can find yourself walking into a contracted deal that you cannot get out of that has you losing money every time you sell coffee. And I can't tell you the amount of times I have talked to people who are in long-term contracts that they can't get out of, and they're losing their shirt, and in some cases lose their business ultimately. I had an issue when I first got in with a large distributor, which is now UNFI, but it was called Mountain Peoples back in the day. And they had picked me up at a show. They said, we want you for all of our Southern California grocery stores. We want to order 50,000 cans as our first order. And I'm like, 50,000 cans? Amazing. I'm going to, I've made it. And I signed the deal, and I personally roasted for 40 hours on my own to help make this deal happen. Like, get the coffee palleted, the truck came, picked it up, drove away. And then all of a sudden, I'm starting to get these bills, like 5,000 here and 3,000 there. I'm like, what is this? They're like, well, no, you have, for the first order, there's MCB chargebacks. So we're going to do manufacturer chargebacks to get your foot in the door. And you agreed to some 2-for-1. So we have 2-for-1 offers out in our catalog. So you have to pay those costs. And then 6 months later, 20,000 cans pulls up to my dock and they unload it and they drive away. They said, yeah, because the 6 months, we pull the coffee after 6 months and we're going to get fresh stock in. So that's that, taking all that coffee back. I'm like, what am I going to do with 6-month-old cans after, and then I had to pay them back for all that.
You could always tie the strings on and do that.
Well, that's how I started the whole bean store. I started offering these cans at a cheap price, and then you could come back and what ended up happening was the customers, I just opened my warehouse doors and I had these coffees in giant bins and I was selling them at $5 a can. And then the customer would come back like, hey, do I give these to you to recycle? I'm like, or you could refill it since we're here if you want to refill. And then I was just doing it off the roaster, and then took an old demo booth and put it in the corner, started refilling cans. People were coming into my warehouses. Then I opened a retail store. So the mistake turned into an opportunity. But moving forward to today, I have had a number of my customers that buy green coffee from me that are involved in store deals that when the coffee market rallied, that was like the first wave of the market shooting up, and they reached out to the large chain and said, hey, the coffee market's up, we need to change our price. They're like, that's fine. They changed their price to a level that they thought was good, and then the market continued to rally, and they go back, and the store chain said, no, that we already did a price raise. That's for a year. You have to deliver at that price for a year. And that customer is like, I can't. I'll go under. So I'm going to pull out of this account. I'm just going to. And they said, no, you're obligated for a year to deliver to us. You can't just pull out. We will come after you. And a lot of these customers were threatened with legal, with lawsuits to make due on their contracts. So I end up sitting down with a lot of these customers and going through the fine print on their contracts, like what are the parameters for the delivery? And one of the loopholes that favored the roaster was there was no guarantee. It didn't have to be Todd's blend or Mike's blend. It was just coffee. So I said, you got to create a budget blend or something that you're using pretty, cheaper coffee, dark roasted, and that at least you're fulfilling the obligation of that contract. You're not losing money, and you're going to live to fight another day. Those that didn't do that, I've had 3 go bankrupt this year. just due to contract stuff. And these were companies, in one case, a company that had been around for 20 years. And to see them go under from one customer, it was heartbreaking to watch.
Yeah.
Like these cautionary tales on grocery, it requires pause and thought. These, especially the chains, they've been doing this a lot longer. They've got a lot more lawyers than you do.
Yeah.
They've written more contracts than you will ever see in your life. So,
right.
Yeah.
And while they may like you in the early meetings, when it comes down to differences, they're not your friend at that point. They are there to uphold their deal. I would very much encourage you to not only read the fine print, but talk to people who have been in wholesale before, get tips, try to get free advice. Many of your traders that you may work with or buy green coffee from have been former roasters, and they're able to freely give you the advice. They want you to succeed. So don't be shy with asking for help on this one. I think it's very important.
Absolutely. As we like to joke, but it is scary true. There is no amount of volume that replaces a sale at a negative margin.
Right.
There's no way to recover that. And I think, to your point, Mike, the grocery stores know that they have the vast lion's share of coffee sales to consumers, and they write contracts accordingly. But yeah, I think pricing that of course allows you to close the sale, but allows you the room to have a business. If we can't deal this way, the sales really can't be banked as sales. I mean, this is
right.
It's indentured servanthood.
Yeah.
In so many ways.
It might be also a good time to remind our listeners that coffee quality exists on a continuum, and thus so does coffee pricing. And most coffee drinkers are dual drinkers. They drink specialty coffee and traditional coffee, or most specialty coffee drinkers. Mm-hmm. They drink both. So a thought, if it hasn't already occurred to you, is expanding your offerings.
Yeah,
sure. So that you
engineering.
have more opportunities in terms of the right price for more customers.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, that's our 4 Ps, and that's what I wanted to bring to the table. It seems like we chewed down pretty good on this.
Oh, yeah. Well
so
done.
just to review those, we had one, which is point of view, which you so eloquently elaborated on through the lens of TaylorMade. We have presence, persistence, and pricing that works. What did we miss, Mark?
I was going to say princely, that you've been very princely today about doing your homework before the show.
I really wanted to bring our final episode of this week of recording that we've done. I wanted to bring something special.
Quietly, well done. That was very impressive, Todd.
I appreciate that. Well, it's been a pleasure, and we will look forward to getting into it again very soon. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Todd.
Take care, all.
You've been listening to the Exchange Coffee Podcast, hosted by Mark Inman and Todd Mackey and produced by me, Mike Ferguson. The Exchange theme music is Exchange by Lo-Fi Zoo. Here comes your postscript, but stick around for some housekeeping on the other side. Okay, who am I talking to? What am I saying?
Those kind of cloppy toys that kids had.
No thanks at all.
If you enjoy this or any show on the Exchange Coffee Podcasting Network, please consider leaving a review, and please subscribe if you haven't already, and tell people about us. You'll find a link to our listener survey in the show notes. Please take the survey. And remember 2 things. 1, you can email us at theexchange@kavoya.com. And 2, black coffee is performed by the one and only Ella Fitzgerald.